Hello, everybody. It's Sarah Haas here with another episode of the Boss Body Podcast. I am so honored that you are here again with me today. And I am really excited because I have a special guest on with me today. Her name is Melissa Franklin, and Melissa is a leadership and development coach. And she is the owner of a company called Structure Innovations. And also, she has an upcoming podcast called Structuring Chaotic Minds. And Melissa is going to talk to us a lot today about mental health and how she has overcome struggles and how she now helps other people who maybe are very ambitious and they have a lot of goals, life goals, career goals, but they struggle with some kind of mental disease or disorders. And it's hard to focus and they tend to get overwhelmed. And how she was able to push past these challenges. And hopefully now she can teach us how we can do the same. And, this hits really close to home for me because I have struggled with depression and anxiety for probably most of my life. I was undiagnosed in my teenage years, but looking back, it was very much there. And I did not actually realize that this was going on until my late 20s. And I've been on a journey ever since. And so I know that a lot of women that I work with are struggling in some of these areas. So I think what she has to say is going to be really, really valuable. So, Melissa, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I'm super excited to be here. I love that introduction. I feel like I have my hands full today what I'm going to be talking about. But I love how you pointed out that you've struggled with depression, anxiety, and it kind of went undiagnosed. I think for me, I struggled with ADHD my entire life, and that went undiagnosed. I didn't realize that until I was an adult. It was funny because I always got lunch detention for some reason. It was like, "So why am I in trouble again?" Because I would not stop talking. I would distract individuals. I was very easily distracted, but my teachers would say, "She's so well behaved, she just cannot stop talking."
Hmm.
Or I would fidget a lot and distract people, but we didn't think anything of it because you're just not behaving. And it went undiagnosed for years, but the funny thing is when I finally got diagnosed with being bipolar in my early 20s, it was almost like an epiphany and a weight got lifted off my shoulders because there was a reason as
Hmm.
to why everything had been happening in my brain all those years, and
Yeah,
it made a lot more sense.
we tend to have a lot of shame and blame and internalize it and think, okay, there's just something wrong with me. Why can't I get this under control? Like, why am I feeling this way and no one else is? And
Mhm.
once you actually have a professional point it out and say, this is why you're struggling with this, and you're not alone. So many other people struggle with the same issue and have the same symptoms.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think the biggest one too is almost like a weight loss journey for everybody. There's a lot of shame in it when I see some people reaching out and they're telling me like I'm struggling to lose weight, or I say I'm going to stop doing this, and then I started doing it again, and I just don't have the discipline, and it's almost like harsh words that we're using towards ourselves, and a lot of shame, and we're disappointed with ourselves, but that doesn't help.
Right.
Instead of looking at, okay, what did we have in place that unfortunately we weren't successful this last time? What can we reframe, and what can we adjust so we can move forward and be successful next time? But really it's a mindset,
Yeah.
and if we're not in the right mindset, no matter what you do, you're really going to end up struggling even more, and it's
Hmm.
almost like you're setting yourself up for failure because you're telling yourself you can't do it,
Yeah.
and you will achieve exactly what you tell yourself you're going to do.
So give me a little background. I know you mentioned you have ADHD and also bipolar. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and your history?
Sure. So I am bipolar 1, or I do struggle with bipolar 1 disorder. I was diagnosed at 23, 22, 23. I was struggling with quite a few issues when it came to medical issues. So I had had tumors and different growths that were coming in and out, and in and out of the hospital starts affecting your mental health when you really can't do much. And it started affecting my marriage. It started affecting what I was being able to do just as a person. And there was a lot of things like dragging me down with all of it. Um, when I ended up going to a psychiatrist and actually going through a battery of tests, he kind of laughed at me at first and he chuckled and he was like, "You're out of control." And I was very offended because it was like, "What do you mean? Why are you laughing at me?" And he was like, "Oh, no, no. I'm laughing because it's just a hormonal imbalance. And
Mm,
as soon as we get this stuff structured out, you're going to be just fine." And then it turns out that it was hormonal imbalances that were actually leading the tumors to grow, but
oh,
also leading for me to have these fits of like rage or absolute like depression, just crying fits, but it was overwhelming amounts of hormones, which were clearly causing extra growth. So there was an overwhelming amount, but nobody was understanding what it was affecting in my behavior and how I was conducting myself and how I was going about things. And mentally, in my mind, I was still the same person. I still wanted to go achieve everything I always wanted to. I was still very type A, very go-getter, like I'm gonna achieve it, I'm gonna conquer the world. But for some reason I couldn't even get up out of bed anymore. And things that made me happy or excited before just were not putting a smile on my face. And
mhm.
then I felt guilty for being ungrateful. And I was like, great, now I'm ungrateful. I have all these amazing things and I have nothing to be happy for. Shame on me. So then it's another layer of shame on top of that.
Yeah.
And
We
then God
women
forbid I open
love
my mouth.
to beat ourselves up and talk shit to ourselves.
You're not wrong. You're
Yeah.
not wrong. Yeah, the doctors really did help. And after we got back the tests, they actually ended up sending me to endocrinologists for further testing. And then it became a cycle of counseling, balancing out medication, and just following up with my doctor. And I was able to go through with everything, I think, for a good 9, 10 years without having major issues. It was really great. I still had issues with growths and hormones because of those imbalances, but it was a lot easier to regulate because I knew what to look for now. A lot of the hormones that actually regulate your mood are made in your gut, but we don't talk about mental health. So because we don't talk about mental health as much,
Mhm.
it's a taboo, it's a stigma. A lot of the information comes to if we can change our diet and make it a little bit healthier, add in sunlight, add in exercise, how much they can actually stabilize those hormones
Mhm.
and have a lot better quality of life. At one point, I was 260 pounds. There was no way that I could jog or do the running that I do now. Absolutely not.
Mhm.
Um, I can go run 9, 12 miles now and it's not an issue, but forget it. I couldn't even run longer than 30 seconds without dying. And it was honestly intense.
Yeah.
Um, but it starts with like a shift in it. And a lot of it was what I was eating and putting into my body first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that influences your health from head to toe, absolutely.
Mhm.
And I know in my case, I did when I started having issues, well, not having issues, when I started realizing what my issues were, there were recommendations for diet and exercise, and I did all of those things and started doing meditation, yoga, mindfulness, and, stress relief, changing my way that I was talking to myself so that it was more positive, and all of those things did help.
Absolutely.
However, I still needed the medication to tip
Mhm.
the scale. So I just don't want people that are listening to feel like they should not be on
Oh,
medication
no, no, no. I would
because,
never end up
that
encouraging
is
that either.
everyone's
That
case is different,
Mhm,
and everything that you do health-wise will make other things better. But
mhm,
sometimes, there's just a hereditary or whatever it is, we don't really know besides
mhm.
hereditary why these things are. But sometimes you can do the therapy, you can do all the things, and you just need some medication on top of that. And I know that for me, that made all the difference. And so I do all the things consistently now. I'm still in therapy, always will be, still taking care of my health and my mental health and using medication
Yeah,
to give.
I love that you can frame it like that because that is something that's still it is scary for some. I know on some of my friends, they're adults now and their parents have a stigma against it, but they raised them so well and they're like, "Well, we never had you medicated." And now as adults, they're like, "But I kind of wish you did. I
Mhm,
really wish you did."
mhm.
And it's funny because I don't want anybody to think when I say it's not just going to be a pill that fixes it in the brain, that it is a balance. I mean, I support being on meds. This is something that I would always say if you actually have those type of mental health issues, you have to work with your doctors to
Yes.
actually decide the best regimen for you because
Right.
everybody is different. Um,
Exactly. Everybody's
and
different, and some people medication is gonna be very helpful. Some people, you don't need it or,
well,
whatever.
it's not
Everybody has
necessarily
to.
that you might not need it, but it's also that that might be not the med for you.
Right.
So some people go to their doctors and like, I need this med.
Mhm.
You might not. You might think you need that med because everybody else is telling you that one's working. But that might not be the combination that you actually need for your body. I can't tell you
Mhm.
how many different meds I got put on, and I dealt with paralysis.
Oh,
I dealt with
wow.
huge rashes all over the body. Here I am, I can't go to the drive-through and order food because I'm having panic attacks and crying. And then I'm getting put on meds, but then I can't pick up my cell phone because my hand just had a paralysis. And then I'm wondering, like, what can I do with myself? How am I even going to adapt if I can't go to work
Mhm.
and make money to pay for these psychiatrists, to pay for these meds?
Mhm.
And it's a cycle. So you have to work with a good support team
Yes.
so you can talk to somebody.
Mhm.
They can support you and show you that it's going to be okay, but they can be there to be like, okay, that med didn't work. Let's try the next one.
Yeah.
That didn't work. Let's try the next combo. And I got very lucky that I eventually found a team that was able to work with me and not give up on me instead of, well, we've already tried it all. You're not wrong, but I got to try it all. Like it was me who tried it
Yeah.
all. And I was very lucky to have a very supportive psychiatrist this most recent round to introduce me to other books and other individuals who actually talked about their bipolar journey
Mhm.
and who were professors and just as type A and driven and goal getters. And it just opened a different world for me that made it a lot more empowering to get to talk about it and actually tell people it's very real and it's also very adaptable if you have the correct support team.
Absolutely. Yeah, so you have overcome so much and created a lot of success for yourself. And I I just commend you for that. So tell everybody, so I mentioned before that your company is called Structure Innovations. Will you give us kind of an overview because that it's so interesting what you do and how you have used your journey to help others?
I appreciate that. So at one point, I was a single mom of two babies, trying to get my degree and over $100,000 in debt because of all the medical issues that I had had. Um, I really could not figure out what I was going to focus on first, whether it was my weight, because I was this very overweight and I wasn't happy with myself, my body, relationships, or anything, whether it was going to be relationships, whether it was going to be my finances, my business, my career. I really couldn't do it. Um, Started reading a lot of books and evaluating and came across the wheel of life and really just looking at the areas. As I looked at the satisfaction for all of them and really evaluated, I started to notice that the biggest thing that needed to change first was my health, because if I wasn't healthy, then I couldn't do any of the other ones.
Mhm.
And then weekly, I evaluated those areas and compared them to goals that I had created for myself. As I had a vision for what I wanted to stick with, as I would deviate and fall off the ladder like we all do, and just kind of like, okay, cool, let me just get back on. Um, I just kept focusing on what I had originally created for myself and just kept evaluating, kept looking at it, kept restructuring it like that. And as I knew what I needed to focus on, that was my main priority the week. I always made sure every day I did three things that worked towards the main priority for the week. And it just showed so much progression. We really don't know how much we can accomplish in 5 years, and we kind of overestimate how much we're supposed to accomplish in a year.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, like, I really feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes within about 7 to 8 years. It's just like, how did all that happen? And it was just a tenfold of setting new goals for myself that I never would have imagined. I can't do that. But
Mm-hmm.
let me just keep going with it, and reevaluating every single week which one was the focus area, which one was the one that needed the most attention, because I wanted to have a good quality of life and a balance overall.
Awesome. And then now, what do you do at Structure Innovations? Tell us about
So
that.
with
Tell
our
us what the
clients
company
now,
is.
we actually take that approach. We'll have individuals most of the time that are really stressed out. They don't really necessarily have mental health issues themselves, so much so as they're developing them now. Maybe they've worked for years and they're experiencing burnout, and they just had a baby and they're dealing with postpartum depression, or they went through an abusive marriage and are dealing with PTSD. These type of situations. Dealing with those type of emotions can be very difficult for people, especially when they haven't dealt with them their whole life, and then they hit this block and plateau that they can't grow anymore. Luckily, with our background and experience, a lot of us are able to help them tackle that. So I have a team of coaches. Aside from myself, I have other coaches that deal with nutrition, other coaches who deal with life coaching, and then other coaches who actually help you grow your businesses. So the reality is, like, there's someone for everyone, and it's just modeling it for them to really look at what's their vision, what's their mission statement, and then we help them drive towards that every week.
That is so awesome. I love that. You're just helping so many people, and it can be such a challenge when, you're in that and you're trying to get organized and you're trying to move forward, and like you said, you started, everything was chaotic, your finances, your career, your health, and when you just kind of don't know where to start. And you're obviously extremely smart and extremely capable, as so many women are. And then when you have this mental health issue, it can kind of just derail everything. So it's amazing that you have created a place that these women can go to sort of restructure and figure things out and get things moving in the right direction. And you are a very accomplished woman. So you definitely are a great role model.
I
You
appreciate that.
have tell me about your background, what your education, because I just find it so impressive.
So, my background, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and another one in sociology. I wanted to do counseling. Um, Sorry about that. I really wanted to do counseling, and it was a goal of mine to help other individuals that were struggling with their mental health. But education called me, and it really just ended up taking me under the wings. I had a very successful career as a middle school math teacher, and then that middle school math teacher eventually started coaching other teachers. So I went back and I got my master's degree in educational psychology so I could focus on children in special education and help grow other teachers that were struggling with that area to help close those gaps. I eventually started traveling over Texas for the charter network I was working with and training other teachers. So growing that area. Um, and then I wanted to do less work. So I decided to become an assistant principal. I brought it all
Oh, that
together.
makes total sense.
I know, right? It just happened to be during COVID. That wasn't the smartest.
Oh, that's great.
Um, while the organization was great and helped me grow, I realized I didn't want to be a principal. I wanted to go do something different. So I reached out to my principal mentor at the time and I told him I was going to go back and get my PhD in organizational leadership. So that's something I'm working on right now. So very diverse, but really a lot around coaching and leadership. It's just always
Mhm.
been framed around coaching, leadership, and personal development.
Yeah. So I want to just recap for the listeners the advice that you've sort of given so far, for women out there who may be struggling with mental health issues, who are ambitious, who want to achieve things, and this is sort of derailing their efforts. So, number one is get help, get a team, work with doctors, work with health coaches, whatever you need to do
Mhm.
to balance hormones or get therapy, whatever you need to do. And then you said that it was really helpful for you to really set goals and then prioritize. So really have like a structure there in front of you in place. Is there anything else that you would recommend for women out there who are struggling and who really do want to move forward and get started with this? What else would you recommend?
Absolutely. I love how you point out the meds, the routine, and the doctor. That is a huge part to it. But the other part is making sure that we practice the mindfulness. It's all about the mindset. So, really starting your day off by practicing gratitude. If you can't get the support team, you can't get everything else, just writing down 3 things that you're grateful for every morning. Because when we're in the state of gratitude, then fear and anger are not present. And those are the biggest mindset blocks that we have. So when we can do that, then it helps us with our state of mindfulness. Just even a breathing exercise. If you don't want to do meditation, you'd be surprised how just paying attention to your breathing makes you
Mhm.
a lot more aware of that extra cookie you're eating throughout the day.
Yeah.
And then just making sure that we add in the correct balance of eating and sleeping,
Yeah.
because we're not machines. But if we don't take care of this one body that we have, we're not going to be able to do all the amazing things that we're meant to do.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And the mindfulness piece is really so important because if we have a lot of stress and a lot of thoughts, and especially if you struggle with any kind of anxiety or anything like that, your brain is just going, you know.
Yes,
And if you're type A, you don't even have to have any kind of a mental,
it's all
disorder
going.
or anything. If you're just a type A and you just, thinking and you have your to-do lists, really for anyone the slowing down, the grounding, the meditation or mindfulness or breathing or gratitude just pulls you into the current moment
Mhm.
and calms your nervous system and gets you out of that fight or flight anxiety so that you're not living that all day long. Because if you start off like that, it's going to be that way all day. And if you can just take, I mean, sometimes it's 3 minutes. I've been doing a gratitude journal for years now, and it really does change your attitude, your mood for
Yes,
the day. Because
it really
instead
does.
of being in a worry and a fear mindset, all of a sudden you're realizing, "Oh my gosh, I have all these wonderful things
Yes.
going for me." And, it's life-changing. So that's awesome,
And
awesome advice.
I love that you point that out, because at the end of the day, it's really just about restructuring that mindset so we can restructure the energy that we start with for the day.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing. If you're in control, then you're going to get your goals, your dreams, and everything that makes you happiest achieved. But if everybody else is in control and everybody else is kind of running the life for you because that mindfulness isn't quite there, you just kind of become a victim of it, and you really are going with the flow, but you're never making your stuff happen. You're making everybody else's stuff happen.
Oh, 100%. I agree because sometimes we feel like we're just keeping our head above water and that we're a victim of our schedule and of everything that's coming at us and the way that our life is just moving along and we're just trying to keep up. When in reality, if you can ground yourself and be in that moment and start out that way, you're you are like, I imagine if it's a tornado, swirling around you, you're in the center where it's calm and nothing,
Yes.
all that you can't control life. You can't
Mhm.
control things that come up and stresses, those are gonna be there, but you
Yep.
can control how you feel in the middle of all that, and that will dictate your actions.
No, I love that you point out that you can't really control that. Life's still going to happen. And
Yeah.
even people who have the best intentions make an amazing schedule kind of beat themselves up when something urgent or last second came up. Like, darn it, I didn't get to stick to my schedule.
Right.
Build in some buffer time, and building in that buffer time to give yourself that grace because you know life is going to happen.
Mhm.
But again, staying focused. But the biggest thing, I like that you point out that everything else is like bringing them down or kind of taking them in every direction. But that's where it comes down to having your vision and being principle centered. Because if we're principle centered, then we're not people centered or work centered or everybody else centered. It's surprising how when you're principle centered and focused on just your goals, everything else will not be a distraction anymore. It's not really going to let you lose that. because you know at the end of the day you're doing what you're supposed to and fulfilling your purpose. And you won't feel guilty about it anymore. You won't feel
Wonderful.
bad for telling your boss you're not going to come in for that extra hour
Yeah.
because you're principle centered and you made a promise to yourself that you were going to stay home with the family that evening.
Yeah.
It's really about focusing on principles.
Boundaries are priceless when it comes to self-care.
I
So,
love
yeah,
that.
I love that you pointed that out. Well, Melissa, thank you so much. This is such good information. I know it's helped me, so I know it's helped a lot of other people out there. So, if people want to read more about this and learn more about you and learn more about your company and what you do, where can they go to get that information?
Definitely, they can see our website at structureinnovations.com, or they can visit us on Instagram. More than there, that's probably where I'll share a lot of my reels and just kind of quirks about life and similar to this. And then we will be starting our podcast next month, Structuring Chaotic Minds.
I'm looking forward to that. I will be subscribing to that podcast.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much, Melissa. I appreciate you
Thank
being
you,
here.
Sarah.
And thank you to all the listeners. I'll always, always appreciate you tuning in. And I will see you here, same place, same time next week.